What is up, everybody? This is Alex from IHE TV, and today I'm talking about the campaign of Destiny 2 Renegades. Sorry about my voice. I'm ill, as always, I guess. I was saying to myself, wow, I made it so much of the year without being ill. Which I guess jinxed myself, so now, basically from October onwards, I've just been constantly ill. Whatever. Irrelevant to this. So I was planning to make a video like this for the Edge of Fate back in summer. A general review / thoughts on the campaign and my reactions to it, but I simply couldn't finish that campaign. I thought it was on the verge of being unplayable with how unfun, bland, mechanically frustrating it was with the energy ball stuff. It was just the last thing I wanted to be playing. So then fast forward to the reveal of this, and it's revealed that it's a whole Star Wars themed expansion. And I'm thinking, wow, how could they reveal something less interesting looking than Edge of Fate? We're deep into the post-endgame MCU problem, where the game feels like it had a conclusive ending, a great jumping off point. So now we're in this issue of, okay, how do we rebuild momentum, not only with that challenge on its face being difficult, but also the added challenge of the studio behind the scenes being gutted, completely reorganized, restructured because of the disaster of the Sony integration. So that is part of the analysis, a level of fairness as far as what this team that has everything stacked against them could even possibly do at this point. And the fact I even am making this video and talking about it indicates a level of quality, or at least playableness. I was able to finish the campaign. There was never a point where I was like, this is so boring and unplayable or mindlessly repetitive to a degree where I can't even muster the energy to finish it. But as is always the case with Destiny, it can never just be a catch-all assessment. It's always complicated, and there's pros and cons and various different threads to pull at. So I'll just jump around and start talking through them. Destiny keeps finding new ways to make itself bad. They have never done a themed expansion entirely based around another IP before. That's kind of what drew me to this. The kind of sadness / snake eating its own tail style of franchise that was inspired by a bunch of things that the original designers conceptualized, being partially inspired by Star Wars, to then fast forwarding to a point where they have a literal Star Wars integration with lightsabers, with speeder bikes, with ATSTs, with blasters, including the sounds, the references, is pretty egregious in multiple different ways. Not only because of its kind of innate stagnation as far as like, well, we've kind of seen a lot of these concepts referenced in Destiny anyway, with the inspiration of it, with dungeons having trash compactor scenes. You know, from the beginning, I think in my very first Destiny video reviewing Destiny 1 Vanilla, I remember referencing Star Wars because the comparisons were so the light and dark, light side of the Force, dark side of the Force. But it didn't really bug me. That wasn't what was the issue with the game or the universe, because they made something transformative out of the obvious inspirations, because it wasn't just Star Wars, it was Japanese manga and anime, different science fiction films and moods like Stalker, whatever it was. It was kind of what was compelling about the art direction to begin with. And it's not that I'm inherently against the idea of a themed expansion based on another IP. I feel like that could actually be done in an interesting way, or in a way that at least maintains its own identity, as opposed to a Star Wars collab in 2025, when the franchise might be the least interesting it has ever been, the most tired, played out. We're actually at a point where Sean Levy is the one holding the flag, carrying this franchise, and it's just pathetic. So I don't know if this was released in 2015, if the sentiment would be better, but it brings with it a myriad of issues, right? Tonally, I think it introduces an interesting problem on a plot level, on a story level, with the idea of, we're kicking off this new saga. This is the second part of the story. Edge of Fate set some things up about the Nine. They're the big new witness tier threat, I guess. And it's already kind of falling into that problem Halo has had since Halo 3. They're like, okay, we need something even bigger and even badder and even more threatening than the most threatening thing we could conceive of. So we're kind of stuck in this issue of, where do we take this? How do we build up something new without being too similar, but also being threatening enough? So then add in the extra issue of having to do this or maintain this and keep that serious tone and world building while making a Star Wars integration where the main villain is, for all intents and purposes, Kylo Ren. And I guess minor spoilers for this, there is basically nothing you can spoil about the story because so little happens. And what does happen are just a string of references to Star Wars anyway, so I don't really see the plot being what is interesting about this at all. It's all the game mechanics and the game feel to me that made it playable. Because now we're at a point where this, what's he called, Bale? But Destiny Kylo Ren isn't a boss fight or taken out in this expansion. He's kind of left alive, as well as the big Cabal Darth Vader dude, which kind of implies that they're going to stick around and be villains that will come back again in some form. So now this universe is kind of stuck with a almost literal Sith as a villain, which erodes some of that innate world building or seriousness when it has to be shackled to this constant reminder of another IP. And that was kind of what was so weird about this. It was like a Fortnite portal opening and your Destiny character just going into Star Wars. And so my Guardian is on Hoth, my Guardian's on Tatooine, my Guardian's on Dagobah. And conveniently, all of these places happen to be biomes we've already built, so we can not have to start from scratch. And maybe once upon a time, those references would have done something for me, the member berry stuff. But I don't think there's a franchise that has been as broadly and widely referenced to Star Wars, so there's nothing exciting about that. And now, the thing I loved most about this franchise that was pretty consistently great, that being the art direction and visual world building, is kind of permanently ruined. And this has been encroached upon for a while now when they started introducing more and more wacky skins into Eververse that did start referencing other franchises. So take that to its extreme. All these years later, you have actual Kylo Ren running around when you're in social spaces, you have stormtroopers, you have X-Wings, and these aren't, oh, that's a vague reference to Kylo Ren, you can tell it's a nod at it. It's a literal Kylo Ren helmet, a literal General Grievous helmet, and so on. And if you're going to give people that option, of course they're all going to buy it and use it. Even in my first impressions video for this campaign, I bumped into someone who I started talking to, and yeah, they were just like Kylo Ren, which cynical short term is like, yeah, they're going to get sales in the store. They're trying to monetize a smaller and smaller player base, which might be part of the reasoning. But this is the con of kind of not having an endpoint and being like, okay, we're going away now. This game has had its life cycle and we're not going to kind of stretch out its death. Because in some dream scenario, this would be around the point where Destiny 3 would be being released. If in some hypothetical universe, all those teams that were making spin-off games that went nowhere, all those resources put into Marathon, which is probably going to flop. If these teams had been tinkering away on whatever Destiny 3 should or might be, could have had some form or at least be further in development, as opposed to the rumors of it kind of just being started, so God knows what the future of this game, let alone the franchise, is going to be. I still maintain that I think that's what it should do, is kind of maybe one last big update with some semi-replayable mode and just be like, we're going away now. There's no elegant way to do it now that they've already tried the Edge of Fate and this post-final shape. They had the perfect ending, and this is the live service model kind of eating itself alive. So yeah, it's utterly creatively bankrupt. It no longer feels like they're making their own thing inspired by other things we like. It is a literal Star Wars expansion. And that goes down to the kind of core design of the campaign. It felt like the creative process wasn't, what are environments that would really complement this story we're trying to tell, these locations we're trying to take you to. It felt like, okay, we got Jabba's Sail Barge map, we got Hoth map, we got Dagobah map. How do we build a story around this? You know, so the list of Star Wars locations, and then had to jerry-rig some kind of loose plot around it. A plot which, surprise, surprise, is mostly about super weapons, scoundrels, the light and the dark. I mean, everyone knows what Star Wars is. I guess they abandoned this idea of Metroidvania design, which they were talking about for Edge of Fate, which kind of manifested as one point in the campaign, there are two paths which go back to the same thing. It's very kind of half-assed. They just like throwing buzzwords out there when they're making a new project. They've done it before. It's like, yeah, technically this is this thing you promised, but just in the most boring surface level integration possible for the idea they're going for. So the aesthetic and the story and the context of Destiny are not interesting, but the actual campaign and mechanical design of it is actually okay. Where the things I do like about Star Wars, which is the architecture, the environments, the range of locations. You'll, one second you will be on a desert, then you'll be on an ice planet or a jungle. That's part of the fun. It's the flora and fauna. So at the very least, the campaign feels varied. It doesn't feel like you're just on one location the entire time. That gets repetitive after a handful of missions. But then this goes back to this constant fluctuation of expansion quality, which bugs me every time because it's so unpredictable. But at this point, I'm trying to decipher whether what level of that is actually part of the addiction of Destiny. It is gambling psychology, right? Where you hop into an expansion that you might have low hopes for, and then it might exceed those expectations or do something that's like, oh, why have you taken so long to do this? Or in the case of what really turned things around for me was Witch Queen, where they added in legendary campaigns, which is something I'd wanted for so long. Just 5 to 10 curated missions that have checkpoints, have a nice level of difficulty, don't involve you doing a bunch of mindless running around locations, quote-unquote, talking to people and grinding the same thing over again. You can do all that after the campaign's over. And for a string of expansions, they did that. Even in Lightfall, it still had the same structure. But after Final Shape, that structure has been abandoned. So fast forward to Renegades, and now the structure is it's honestly more like a season, closer to an expansion. It has a higher production value than the average season. There are still a handful of curated missions, but in between these missions, you are required to play the seasonal activity, which is basically a Destiny Helldivers Light mode, which it has nothing on Helldivers, but is a fairly fun mode. The whole lawless frontier with these different factions fighting against each other. The designs are cool. I thought the Vex in particular look really cool. And there is something kind of heartbreaking about, like, man, you could have done this exact same concept and taken inspiration from something like Star Wars, but made it your own like you used to do. But it kind of gives it a goofiness and a hollowness, which is a shame when contrasted with the game feel of the new blasters, which I've enjoyed playing around with. That feeling of newness is so accentuated when you have a bunch of new weapons to play with, and they actually function differently to something that was in the game before, these heat-based weapons, the cooldown stuff. And even the lightsaber, once you get that, again, harkening back to a seasonal structure where about halfway through the campaign you just do a exotic mission for a lightsaber, which again is a shame that they didn't have to solve any of these creative issues themselves of like, yeah, we want something like a lightsaber in Destiny 2. How do we solve that creative problem of not, being Rebel Moon and being so on your face and obvious? I say, well, okay, we can just use the sound design, all of it, like the crystals and everything. It's all just a direct reference to Star Wars. We don't have to do anything creative ourselves. Whereas I feel like a lightsaber being integrated into the original vanilla Destiny would be shrouded in a few more creative changes. They'd have to come up with their own sound design, their own animations and concepts and lore. And they're just lucky that the actual mechanical game feel of using it is really fun. It's ridiculously strong. You've got different ways to customize it, different fighting styles. As far as a weapon that's fun to grind customization for, it's a good implementation of it. And despite all the criticisms, it always goes back to that game feel. I haven't been playing any first-person shooters for a while, so once I jumped into this and was just back to that reactive, crunchy feedback of watching your power abilities like set off these chain reactions and pretty fun combat arenas, it's like, yeah, that's the heart of it. That's what's going to keep you playing. It feels amazing. Core gameplay feels great. And because they just didn't fuck around with the base mechanics too much, like as far as they go is in the Lawless Frontier, you can summon healing pools and Vex domes and airstrikes, and you can level them up and stuff like that. The more systems like that the game has, I think the better and more replayable it could be. Because one of the games I have been playing is like a Hades 2, which is built around playing the same thing again and again. But the amount of customization and like modularity you have, where you can customize how many enemies you want, if you want mixes of enemies from different parts of the game coming in, or them to have more health or move faster and all this kind of stuff, and you get rewarded more for doing that. They've really missed a beat where I feel like years ago they should have built some, redesign the Prison of Elders or something, but build in these reward systems that can be expanded upon. Or even in that survey that's been going around from Bungie themselves asking like, hey, what do you think of the idea of having companions that can follow you around, or just sandboxy stuff that used to make their games so unpredictable and replayable and vibrant? Because I kind of forgot, and this expansion reminded me that like, oh yeah, the whole vehicle thing used to be a big part of your sandboxes and game design. It's just a shame that to get like an ATST speeder bike mission, it has to be through a Star Wars skin that has the literal Star Wars sound effects and all of it. So it feels more like playing a Bungie Star Wars game than anything to do with Destiny. It's extremely weird. Because honestly, now would be the time to have the loose, hey, you know what, maybe this isn't even lore to the game. It's on life support. It's just a Star Wars expansion, it's not that serious. But it does try to be serious. It's trying to build something new off of this, but it's cannibalizing itself because, like, what are you supposed to do? Because going back to that player count, with their first new impression being the Edge of Fate and that peaking at about 108,000 players on Steam, it obviously didn't do its job at reintroducing people into the world. In fact, it only kind of confused people and put people off. Now this expansion comes out and peaks at 70,000, which is, it's honestly unthinkable for what this franchise used to be. And I mean, both Destiny and Star Wars are actually quite analogous with what they symbolically used to mean, and how they both, with given enough time and drama, have no creative juice left, have nothing intriguing about them. They both just need to go away until there's something exciting to actually show, or creative, or some spin on it, just something, because it's in trouble. But endlessly fascinating for me to keep on top of. The only expansion I haven't finished at this point is Edge of Fate. So this is a weird one. It kind of winds up just being more Destiny, with the caveat being it's more Destiny except it's Star Wars Destiny this time. So if you like Star Wars and you're somehow not sick of it, and you like all those references, you'll probably like it. You'll get some kick out of that. But honestly, it was kind of making me just want to re-download Star Wars Battlefront 2, or play one of the games with Cal Kestis in it and get an actual fix of the IP that it's rolling around in. I don't think it does set a good precedent for the franchise, which was built up on its own kind of originality and own world building, for it to Fortnite itself. And I think they've acknowledged the fact that they don't want to make another full IP expansion like this. Maybe it was an experiment, maybe there was some financial thing or some pressure from Sony to do it, who knows. It's always more complicated than it seems on its face. And there is the added caveat for me where me talking about this and me playing it, like, it does fund itself. There's like nothing on the line for me compared to like an average consumer, where like if I was making the financial decision between playing this or getting like a Hades 2 or Helldivers, obviously I would pick those other games. But I don't think I'm alone as someone who has played most of Destiny at this point and is kind of watching and seeing where it's going and how sad it's getting and is kind of reporting in. I know for a fact a bunch of Destiny 2 players are in that exact same position, so I think there's valuable feedback to be had there. So yeah, let me know if you've played this, if you like it more than me, if you're about on the same level as me, or just so sick of Star Wars you couldn't even bear to play it. But yeah, this is a weird one. It's like mechanically better than I was expecting and more fun to just mindlessly play than I was anticipating. Easy to play. Although fuck the portal. The portal like is atrocious. They've added way more steps, it feels like. I don't know if that's even true, but it just seems like lifeless and hollow. And again, the fault notification of like everything has to look like a streaming service. It's like, man, your identity has just been carved out year after year. Just a bigger chunk just being carved out. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. See you on the next vid. Bye!